How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Greetings and welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Okay, so yesterday, if I got one email, I got 1 million for people. You got to talk about France. Actually, so Sunday night, my friend Nancy texted me and said, can you explain what was happening in France? And I texted her back and said, just given the nature of yesterday's show and all the book recording and stuff, I had specific things I wanted to make sure I got. And so I would get to it, but it would be today. Well, it is today in the third hour, and we got to talk about what happened in France. Because you'll be unsurprised to learn the people who think the election was stolen in this country in 2020 are now convinced the election was stolen in France, despite actually not even knowing what's going on in France. They've decided this, which is frustrating, frankly, that we're here. But let me explain this one to you, please, because it's not hard to understand, although the political dynamic is very interesting. I don't want to use far right, far left, although those labels are somewhat useful. I guess Marie Le Pen, her organization, her party is considered on the far right. And then you actually have communists and Green Party and socialists on the left. You have a rabidly anti-Semitic person on the left, although people on the far right in France, I guess you could say, the centrists, the moderately social liberal, but more fiscally business-friendly centrists led by the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, are in there. So this is the way elections work in France. It's miserable. First of all, mandatory voting for the parliamentary elections. So there's a Senate and a parliament. When the president had to call, because the parties insisted the president call a vote for the parliament, he called the vote. He called it much sooner than people were expecting. He didn't have to do it immediately, but he did. His gamble was he wanted to shut out for lack of a better word, the far right. And I should say the anti-immigration socialists, because the far right in France isn't like free market conservatives. It's socialists who hate immigrants, basically. If you heard otherwise, you need to understand that the supposed far right in France is actually once government programs, once big government welfare for French citizens. They just don't like immigrants. And that's kind of the galvanizing issue, more or less. There are other nuances in there, but I am simplifying. Spare me I read it on the internet and I'm now an expert, or I watched a YouTube video. Trying to make this simple for everyone. Here's how the elections work in France. There's mandatory voting. You have to vote. Some people don't vote, though, and they get fined. All the candidates, they run in districts just like we do. And there are 2 weeks of the election, or 2 weekends on the election. So you have a weekend. If you get an absolute majority that weekend, that first election weekend, so if you get over 50% of the vote cast, you win the election. However, also, you have to have gotten at least 25% of the total voters who were eligible to vote. So if people didn't turn out, or there were a massive number, remember France has way more parties than we have. If that happens and you got 50% outright, but you didn't get 25% of the total people who were eligible to vote, well, you have to go to the next weekend's election. It's spread out a couple of weeks between. So it's a little bit more complicated, correct? So now here's the second one. The second vote, also on a Sunday, is plurality. So remember, 2 rounds. First round is absolute majority, and you get 25% of the vote. The second round is plurality. Now, how do you get into the second round? Well, all of the candidates who got at least 12.5% of the vote can participate. Now, there are a lot of candidates. So what if only one candidate got 12.5% of the vote and everyone else got, like, you had a million candidates, they each got 1%? Well, then the top two candidates with the most number of votes from the first round, they're on the ballot. But typically in France, the vote is so divided among so many parties over time, you have multiple candidates who get 12.5% of the vote or higher, and they move into the second round. So this is what happened in France. Around the country in rural areas, the right, the Marie Le Pen group, they did very, very well in the first round, and in the second round they did very, very well, and so they won. But in a lot of suburban and urban areas in France, the left consolidated, and they all agreed that we're all going to drop out except for the guy in second place. Or maybe in first place. Whoever got the most votes, that guy we're going to leave on the ballot. Everybody else is going to drop out, even though you could technically advance to the second round. You're not going to. You're going to keep your name off the ballot. And we're all going to vote for that guy because we want to stop the far right. We want to stop Le Pen. And that's what happened. So here's the problem for France. One, they have a divided parliament now. No one has a clear majority. It's split about three ways between the left, the center, and the right. Although the left got most votes, not significantly so, more so than, for example, Macron's group. But there's another problem. The right in France still got about 25% of the vote. They actually got the most votes, even though they did not get the absolute majority. They certainly have the plurality. And that's a problem for her group because they're now marginalized by everyone else. What you have to understand is that though they have the most votes, countrywide in population, those votes came from rural areas. And the suburban and the urban people don't particularly like them. There is an immigrant bent. You may be anti-immigrant. You may share some of the values of her party. The problem, however, is that most people in France do not. Most people in France are actually on the left, not the right. I mean, go to France. You'll realize this pretty quickly. Now, the problem that the French have is that the unassimilated immigrant populations have increasingly committed the crimes in France. There is a massive pool of poor immigrants who are unassimilated into France. I mean, look at all the Palestinian flags and all the protests and all the rallies for the left. In addition to that, you do have this far left bent that is very anti-Semitic. In fact, the leader of one of the far left parties is a deep anti-Semite who has declared if he gets power, he'll recognize Palestine as a state. There are all sorts of problems in this situation. You know who it benefits actually is Emmanuel Macron, because he can be president and run a technocracy, so to speak, rely on the bureaucrats in France without parliament doing much. They are going to have to pass a budget and do things like that. But that's the setup in France. So, yes, you're absolutely right. The right, Marie Le Pen's group, got the majority of the vote. Well, I shouldn't say the majority of the vote, the plurality of the vote. They got the most votes cast. The problem is that it wasn't a majority in most places. It was a plurality. And all the other campaigns and parties suspended votes to block them from power. It's politics. They played by the rules. There was no theft. Just because your side didn't win doesn't mean there was a theft. They do this virtually every single election. It's why Marie Le Pen has never gotten into power, because the left and center rallied together to block her. The problem for France is that when you look around the world at other nations where this has happened, they have over time produced a deep populist backlash to the elite. And you're starting to see it in places like the Netherlands and in Denmark and elsewhere. You're starting to see this real backlash to the elite happening in Europe. Look what happened in Italy. Giorgia Meloni expected a right-wing surge in France, and it happened, but everybody else rallied to block it. No one really saw Giorgia Meloni coming. Now, she herself, to her credit, has proven herself in Italy to be a very competent prime minister. They haven't had a massive rollover of governments in Italy like they had before her rise. But there are a couple of lessons to take away here. One, appreciate that in our system, you don't have to go vote. You can't be forced by the government to go vote. Two, appreciate that we do first past the post. That means whoever gets the most votes, even if it's not a majority, wins. And in France, they have this bifurcated system that is designed to build real consensus. But what it actually does is it has allowed this massive system of parties to fester. In this country, in some states, you go vote and you see a bunch of parties that have nominated candidates. But in most states, you don't. In most states, it is the Democrats and Republicans, maybe the Libertarians, maybe the Green Party, maybe the Working Family Party. But there aren't a lot. And that has actually forced more stability in the system because the Democrats and the Republicans, by and large, do have to find a way to accommodate moderate voters to get elected. And that matters. That provides stability more so than this massive system with millions of parties. So that's France. I hope I've done my bit for King and Country to be able to explain it. Now, one more extrapolation here. Across Europe, the biggest issue that we're seeing is concern about immigration. Same thing in this country. Number one issue for most voters, immigration. The elite in Europe blame essentially the base. They blame the voters. They blame the citizens for being anti-immigrant, for being racist and xenophobic. There is a real echo of that in our country too. And it's something we all need to pay attention to. Immigration is a galvanizing issue. It was for Donald Trump in 2016. And the media, the elite, vilified him for it, and he tapped into something that transcended race. This time, even more so, with border security. Immigration continues to be a major issue in this campaign cycle, and neither the media nor the Democrats, but I repeat myself, really have a clue on how galvanizing this issue is for so many Americans who very simply, quite frankly, want their border secured and don't want a wave of illegal immigrants in this country. You look at what's happening in parts of Europe. Look what's happening in parts of Paris that simply are not safe because of armed gangs of criminals who have ties into the illegal immigrant community, particularly from Algeria and elsewhere, former French colonies. It's not a stable, healthy situation for France. And it's growing the numbers of people who are anti-immigrant and identifying with the right, even though the only issue they really agree on is the immigration issue. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here. And yes, my voice continues to hold up. We'll see how well it goes through the week. Okay, so I remember a time before, that means pre-COVID, where one of the things McDonald's had was like you get a cup, and the salad was in a cup. And so as you're driving down the road, you could hold the cup like you were drinking, and you were just tossing salad at your face. Stop it. And you could eat your salad. That was very bizarre. Since COVID, McDonald's has given up salads altogether. They're gone. No more salads from McDonald's. They tried to pride themselves. You had this wave. Remember when Michelle Obama was first lady and it was all about healthy eating? They planted the White House garden. They ruined lunches for kids at school and made them like super healthy, super gross, all that sort of stuff. And McDonald's followed the trend. They wanted to innovate with salads and making healthier options and on and on and on and on. And the whole time, it just seemed kind of ridiculous to me. Well, they've abandoned salads altogether now at McDonald's. No more salads at McDonald's. Turns out people go to McDonald's because they want burgers and fries and maybe chicken nuggets. And if it's working, a milkshake. But good Lord, those machines. Come on, McDonald's, do better. You know what else they've abandoned at McDonald's? The synthetically made fake meat. The Impossible. I don't know what they use, the Impossible brand or the Beyond brand. But they tried them at McDonald's. They tried them at, maybe Burger King still has them. I don't know. They tried it at McDonald's. Not so much. Not a success. Nobody wanted them, which it's not surprising to me. These companies are having a hard time scaling, but also one of the reasons they're having a hard time scaling is lack of demand. You can't do a high enough volume if there aren't enough people who really want it. Nobody seems to really want their fake meat. And it's not even like, like I've got friends who are vegetarians and vegans, and they eat the black bean corn patty thing that is supposed to be okay. It's not quite a burger, but it's got that mouthy feel. And even most of them, they don't like the Impossible and the Beyond Meats. Now, you might. Listen, I understand there are always people out there who like something, and when you say that this isn't successful because people won't eat it, they must insist that actually I'm the one. Nobody wants to know you're a freak. Nobody wants to know. You don't have to raise your hand and say me, because nobody else wants that stuff. And it's clear from the market. I actually know someone who's related to one of the chemists at one of these places, and he said all along that his wife, who's involved, wasn't sure about the scalable nature of this sort of stuff. And it's turning out that way, that people simply just don't want the fake burgers and the fake meat. Now they've even got fake chicken from these places. It's lab-grown synthetic hemoglobin, which was the key to kind of give it a mouthy, meaty feel. And for years, scientists have told us that the food we eat that is less processed is better for us. This is the most processed food. And the anti-cow people have insisted this is the future. Synthetic lab-grown meat that's not very healthy for you and is highly, highly non-environmentally friendly. The amount of energy and resources that go into producing this stuff, they've had to fool themselves into making people believe that it's more friendly than a cow when it's not. And now McDonald's is signaling it's kind of done with the healthy food. I mean, I'll tell you my order when I go to McDonald's: 2 burgers, no pickles, extra ketchup, medium fry, and a Dr. Pepper. That's what I get. I don't do it a lot, but occasionally, man, the McDonald's, they're not as good as they used to be when they they parboiled them in beef stock and they use lard to fry. They're not as good as they used to be, but you still know, if you hit McDonald's when the fries are fresh, it's one of the best things. This isn't an ad. I'm just telling you. What is an ad is to remind you about Swiss America, because with all the banking turmoil out there right now with Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that's the BRIC nations. When you hear about the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they're kind of aligned economically more and more, and they're buying up gold reserves because they think it's going to hurt us or that we're headed for decline. Swiss America has been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years. If you're interested in safeguarding your hard-earned cash, you need their free report, The Secret War on Cash. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. They can educate you on protecting your assets in their free report, The Secret War on Cash, and it includes digital forms of currency. All you need to do is call or text and send them my name, 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. Text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. One last time, 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson. Yeah, I got to go back, record more of the book. So I got through 5 chapters yesterday. We got 10 or 11 chapters, so I'm hoping that today or tomorrow I'll be finished and I can go home. Nonetheless, before I go back, I want to talk to you about the Republican platform. Made some hay yesterday. They did a couple of things. One, they got rid of all the language calling for a restoration of traditional marriage, essentially gay marriage ban. So traditional marriage out the window in the Republican platform. And they watered down the language on abortion. And that's raised the hackles of a lot of pro-life activists around the country. Some say it's okay. A lot of them not happy. The activist core not very happy. Essentially, the Republican platform has for years, decades, had a plank that said that the 14th Amendment applies to the unborn, and also that there should be a federal abortion ban, not just overturning Roe v. Wade. And the party has gotten rid of that now, essentially state by state. This is Donald Trump's position, and some activists are upset with the watered-down language. Likewise, Christians are concerned with the end of the position on traditional marriage and essentially the Republican Party now embracing gay marriage. Well, whether you like it or not, let me just be frank with you. The moment the Access Hollywood tape came out, where Trump said he could grab a woman by her you-know-what, and y'all all voted for him, he knew you were cheap dates. I mean, those of you who said that morality matters when Bill Clinton was president and then Donald Trump gets to be president, morality, schmorality. I mean, come on. Now, listen, it's don't be mad at me for saying that. You know it's true, but also it's still a pretty reasonable platform. I dislike the parts on tariffs and stuff, but you're not going to get a federal abortion ban. And, you know, some of the major pro-life groups in D.C. are kind of acknowledging that this conversation is going to happen at the state level, and there has been this poorly figured out divide on the right on abortion. You wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. You said return it to the states. The Supreme Court says okay. And now some of the pro-lifers say, well, actually, we need a nationwide ban on abortion. Let's do 15 weeks. The problem here, as Nikki Haley pointed out, much to people's scorn, is that you're not going to get it passed. You might be able to get it past a House controlled by a lot of Republicans, and you'll lose some Republicans in the process, but you're not going to get it through a Senate. Even if you get 60 seats in the Senate, you still got Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. You're going to have to get like 65 to 67 seats in the Senate, which is historically not possible for the GOP. So you're never going to get it. So why fight it? Why put it in a party platform? Frankly, I think it's kind of reasonable where the party landed up, which is deal with this at the state level. Have 50 state policies. I'm a big believer in federalism. I think that the states should be allowed to do what the states want to do by and large. Remember, when the country was founded, the states were sovereign states, and they ceded limited power to Washington, D.C., not plenary power. The states have the plenary power, not Washington. And so I do think that abortion at the state level is fine. Now, I'm not opposed to a 15-week abortion ban because that's more liberal than any country in Europe, more liberal than France, more liberal than Sweden. Most people kind of go along with that. Fetal pain bill, late-term abortion, things like that. The GOP still calls explicitly for the opposition to late-term abortion, things like that. I'm not opposed to a 15-week ban. The problem is there are some in the GOP who consider themselves abolitionists, who want the absolute abolition of abortion. They are not going to go along with a 15-week ban. They want an absolute ban, and a 50-state solution is anathema to them. But they're going to go vote for Donald Trump, and that's kind of the thing here. Donald Trump gave you the Supreme Court that got rid of Roe v. Wade through Jackson versus Dobbs versus Jackson Women Health. He gave you the win, and you're not going to turn your back on him now. And that gave flexibility to Donald Trump and the partisans he put on the platform. They excluded some pro-life activists from the platform committee because they didn't think they'd go along with what they wanted to go along with. Now, on other portions of the platform, I think a lot of people will agree. There's a very hard-line position on immigration within the platform. And I think that'll make people happy. There is support for in vitro fertilization, which, except for some pro-lifers, most people will be reassured by that. And then there's a section on using federal power to remove policies in academia, the military, and throughout the government, the DEI policies, things like that. I think most people will support that. And there is the explicit call for mass deportations. I think most people will support that. It's the cultural, socially conservative issues where the GOP is out of step with the nation's culture that the GOP has abandoned. There will still be conservative activists, and they will still be in the Republican Party, and they will still support Donald Trump for now. But their unwillingness to sit out the election allows them to be taken for granted. And you should understand that dynamic. I mean, very few. There will be some, and they'll say it publicly, although they may still go vote for him. But there will be some pro-life activists who say, well, I can't vote for Trump now. I mean, he got rid of a national abortion ban. He wants this settled at the states, and look what's happening to us in the states. We're getting slaughtered. I can't support a guy like that who gives up on this fight. There will be some, but they will be in the vast minority. The majority will support him. And the minority that won't are kind of insignificant in number. And he knows that. The Republicans know that. So they can do this, and there's nothing you can do to stop them because they know they have you. And in knowing they have you, they know you're going to turn out, you're going to give money, you're going to walk, you're going to knock on doors, and you're going to go vote. If you're going to be a cheap date, you're going to be a cheap date. I don't mean that insultingly. That's just the raw politics of this. Is they're trying to bring people into the party by not alienating, for example, gay rights activists who think the GOP wants to end marriage. They've gotten rid of the language calling for traditional marriage. So now they can say, look, the Republican Party abandoned this. You can come. Or suburban women who may be scared of a GOP opposing in vitro fertilization or a nationwide abortion ban. They can say, hey, look, we believe the states should settle this. 50-state solutions, we're federalists. And they probably will bring in some people. The reality, however, is that no one cares about the platform. Look at how the Democrats are vilifying Project 2025. I don't think I got a text message yesterday, I think it was. I hadn't had time to respond, so I'll do it here. What can I do to persuade my friends Project 2025 is nothing? Look at the Republican platform. The actual Republican platform is not Project 2025. The actual Republican platform was adopted by the GOP. Donald Trump himself has said the Republican platform they adopted in Milwaukee is the platform, not Project 2025. He has nothing to do with Project 2025. It's just progressive trying to scare, frankly, black voters. But read this. The Project 2025 is not a platform that any person would ever embrace in large part because Project 2025 is too detailed, too particular. It gives no wiggle room for a candidate, and every candidate wants wiggle room. That's just the reality of the situation. The Republican platform now is broader. Chris LaCivita is the COO of the Republican National Committee. He's one of Donald Trump's right-hand guys, was directly with the campaign. And he's been very dismissive of the platform, and I think he's right. I got to tell you, I'm a Republican, I'm an activist, I'm a conservative. I've been involved with political campaigns. I've been involved with presidential political campaigns. I don't ever remember anybody saying, oh, the party platform, we're bound by the party platform. Democrats and Republicans try to bind each other to the party platform, but nobody on either side really reads it. Nobody really cares. It's just something both sides use as a weapon. And so LaCivita, I think, was right to say, we're going to get rid of this detailed platform. There's no reason for it. They want to use it as an albatross around our neck. We're not going to play the game. Good for him. I absolutely think that was the right thing to do. Now, as for the substance and the details, one of the issues that I disagree with is the tariffs on everything. There are some on the right who would like to ditch the income tax by just putting a tariff on everything. Sounds great, doesn't it? We're just going to put a tax on all of our imported goods and that'll cover the budget. Except we know what we import. We know the value of what we import. And we know even if you put 100% tax, doubling the price of everything tomorrow that's imported into this country, you wouldn't get even half the money the income tax currently generates. Now, we're already spending beyond what the income tax generates. So if you get rid of the income tax, which you're not going to do because you're not going to repeal the amendment, and you replace it with a tariff, the math does not add up. You head to fiscal ruin. And by the way, that's the other plank of the Republican platform that has now gone down the memory hole and disappeared. The Republicans have, since Reagan, had an explicit call to end the national debt, to pay down the national debt. There is no longer language about reducing the national debt or paying it off. There's just one line about slashing wasteful government spending. The Republican Party, like the Democratic Party, is becoming a spend-it party. Doesn't matter whether you make it, just spend it. Spend people's money. They've also decided to preserve Medicare and Social Security, which the GOP has long called for reform. That's out the window as well. I mean, the Republicans are kind of old school Democrats at this point with their platform, economically at least. Maybe not socially, although they've gotten rid of support for traditional marriage. They've watered down abortion. This is all about Donald Trump, though. It's who Donald Trump is. He's a transitory candidate. Listen, if he gets elected, he's only going to be there for 4 more years. And then the GOP is going to start the conversation over again with what is the party, what does it look like, and who's in charge. And Donald Trump will have some say in that, but not altogether a massive amount of say. And if he does get elected and the GOP gets wiped out in the next midterms in 26, it's going to be harder for him. He is going to be not only a lame duck, but he's going to be somebody that more and more Republicans probably think it's time for a change. He's been president for 8 years. Now, this happens. This isn't a criticism. This is just a reality. Republicans moved to George H.W. Bush from Ronald Reagan. Then they decided to go with Bob Dole. George H.W. Bush and Bob Dole both ran against Ronald Reagan in 1980. You got George W. Bush in 2000. In 2008, the GOP decided to go John McCain's direction, who ran against Bush in 2000. And then in 2016, decided to blow it all up with Donald Trump. Rest assured, the Republican Party has a history of blowing up their incumbent's party and rebuilding it in a different image. And that will probably happen to Donald Trump as well. So having a minimal party platform that reflects Donald Trump, who himself believes in getting deals done and not tipping his hand, I think this is a party platform that reflects Trump. And while I disagree with parts of it like tariffs and stuff like that, I mean, it is a build up the military, crack down on crime, secure the border platform. And I think that's why people want to vote for Trump. They're not voting for Trump on abortion issues and pro-life issues. They already got rid of Roe v. Wade. They're not really voting for Trump on marriage. I mean, Donald Trump is surrounded with a bunch of gay and transgender friends. Look at Bruce or Caitlyn Jenner. He's not the social conservative warrior, but he enabled the social conservative warriors on the Supreme Court to do what you wanted. So you're going to vote for him. And he knows it. And you know it. And you may not like me for pointing it out, but you know it. Now, let me tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You're going to like it too. If you go to EdenPureDeals.com and you put in the discount code ERIC3, ERICK3, you can get 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms for less than $200. You save $200 and you get an incredible product that can fit in your travel bag. You can hold it in your hand and it wipes out odors. I'm staying in a hotel this week. It's actually a great hotel. I don't need it, but I got it with me in my travel bag in case I needed it because it's small, it's portable. I can plug it into my laptop with a USB cord if I needed to, or in my car. I can plug it directly into the wall, and it's going to wipe out odors, litter box odors, pet odors, smoke odors, you name it. And it's also an air purifier, so it gets rid of the pollen. It gets rid of the dust. It's great. It works. It's the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You get 3 of them for less than $200. You save $200 by going to EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3, at Eden, like the Garden of Eden, pure as the driven snow. EdenPureDeals.com, discount code ERIC3. Welcome back. Okay, so I got to tell you guys the setup. It's kind of wild, actually. So, you know, when I leave here, I got to go back. I'm doing the audio version of my book, and yes, my throat is bothering me. I'm drinking a lot of water, warm water, they told me to drink, which I'm not a tea drinker. I know people recommend tea. I don't like tea. I'm sorry. My wife says it betrays the fact I grew up overseas in a tea-drinking country, no less, but that I'm not truly Southern because I don't like sweet tea. I don't like tea. I like coffee. I don't like tea. So they're telling me drink warm water, which I'm willing to do. I'll drink warm water. But nonetheless, so you go into this office, and then you go to the back, and they close you in an office. And then in the office is a booth, and it's pretty good size. I would say like the size of a hotel bathroom, and the ceiling is foam, the ground is carpet, the walls are foam. There's like cloth draped everywhere in front of the foam as well, and you sit there and every time my clothing, when I brush against my clothing, I have to stop and redo it. The microphone's that sensitive. If I have a throat noise, like I got saliva in my mouth and it makes a sound, or my throat kind of gurgles, or my stomach growls. My stomach was growling because of breakfast yesterday and this morning as well. And I had to redo lines. It's wild. So I tried yesterday. I ate right before I got there. This morning I got up and I had some distance, but tomorrow I'm going to have to put a great deal of distance between breakfast and being there. Going to have to get up early just so I can get some food, or I may just try to grab something in the hour between. So I leave there at 11, rush to the studio, do the show. Then I got an hour to get back. I'm there from 4 to 6. It is a very long and grueling day, but it is wild. So for those of you who don't know, in recording an audiobook. Now, unlike the last time, so the last setup I had was there was a teleprompter through a glass, and I had to read the teleprompter, and they'd scroll it back and forth if I missed stuff. With this one, they actually let me have an iPad with it on the screen in blown-up font, but I'm only allowed to scroll up during paragraph breaks, because if I tap the glass and try to scroll during the middle of a paragraph, there's a chance that gets picked up by the microphone. So I got to read a paragraph, scroll to see more paragraphs, read the fully visible paragraphs, and scroll. It is a production. And again, like if my stomach grumbled, if my throat there was a throat sound or saliva in my mouth, or I brushed against my clothes, it made a sound, or the headphone cord, there's an engineer in the other room who says, stop, go back, read the last sentence. And you hear like 3 seconds of your voice to where you need to start, and then you pick up again, and you got to read it in the same cadence and stuff like that. This has been a wild process. But yesterday and then this morning, I kind of got the rhythm and the pace. Part of the problem, honestly, is you guys. Having to break it up and then come do this before going back, and then it's hard to get back in the rhythm and pick up speed. But I did make it through 5 chapters yesterday. Well, technically, 4 1/4 chapters. We're into chapter 5. So I got to finish chapter 5, or did this morning, and we got through to about halfway through chapter 6. So we're hoping to get through the end of chapter 7, and then we'll have 8, 9, and 10 on Wednesday and Thursday. And my voice absolutely is going to be spent by the end of the week. But, so I'm supposed to go play golf on Friday with a guy. We followed each other on Instagram. He's a griller. He smokes meats and grills. And so Benton and I are supposed to go play golf on Friday. We were supposed to go play with my friend Jeff, whose wife informed him that he was actually going to go to the beach. And we tried to convince him that surely he loved playing golf with us more than he loved his family. And he didn't take the bait. I think his wife might have threatened to kill him. So it'll be the two of us. And at least I'll be able to be on a golf course on Friday after, assuming it doesn't rain. I'm sure you guys care. Okay, I'm going to go back, see how much I get. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Y'all have a fantastic rest of your day.